turn with me to the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 15. Deuteronomy chapter 15. I want to just share a couple of words of encouragement and kind of a charge to our ministry, to our church, out of that with respect to what has been going on. Very briefly today, Deuteronomy chapter 15. I want to look at a couple of elements. We don't have time to deal with every single thing, but I want to look at a couple of elements out of somewhere between verses 7 and verse 11. Verse 7 and verse 11. Verse 7 says, "If there be among you a poor man, one of your brothers, within your towns, which the Lord is giving you, literally is giving you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand from your poor brother." All right? Look at verse 8. "But you shall open your hand wide to him, and shall surely give him sufficiently for his need, or that which he is in want." Verse 9, "Beware that you don't develop a wicked saying in your heart, the 7 year of release is at hand, so that your eye is evil against your brother, and you don't give him anything. And he cried to the Lord and say, it be sin unto you." Look at verse 10, "You shall surely give him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give. Because that for this thing the Lord shall" what? Guess what? What will he do? "He will bless you in all your works and in all that you put your hand to." Y'all see that? Y'all reading that? Even verse 11 repeats the very same idea. "For the poor shall never cease." You always have poor in the land. "Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide unto your brother, to the poor, and to the needy." And to the needy. This is the word of the Lord. Word of the Lord. Now, all of them shared. I want to pick up on something I believe Natasha said when we were dealing with one fellow was it Limon, the first spot that we had. And he said this out of his mouth, and I'm going to try to remember to the best of my ability. He said, "Somos pobres económica, pero no somos pobres en espíritu." In other words, he said, we are poor economically, but we are not poor in spirit. And that blew my mind. That blew my mind. From that moment on, that set the tone for the entire trip. Because here they were worshiping on top of dirt ground with a canopy tent and had a little wooden podium. He had dogs running through, had chickens, all of this kind of stuff. And they were giving God praise with a heart like I had never seen before in the United States of America. Which let me know that their praise was not based upon their possessions. And so, I figured we were going to go down there and be a blessing to somebody. And they said, no, you've come for us to be a blessing to you. All right, so now let me walk up to this Deuteronomy passage. As you know, let me give you a little context. How many books of the law? We didn't do our quiz. How many books of the law? How many books of the law? How many books of the law? How many books to the law? Y'all going back to the beginning of the quiz. So y'all memorized it based upon how I hear it. No, I skipped the quiz today. There are 5 books of the law. What are they?
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
Amen. What does Genesis teach?
God.
What does Exodus teach?
God rescues his
What does Leviticus teach?
God relates to
What does Numbers teach?
God refuses.
What does Deuteronomy teach?
God restores.
Here it is. This Deuteronomy, or Deuteronomos, which means the second giving of the law. As those of you who read the Bible, you remember that when God got the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt, he brought them to the wilderness. He said, go and take the land. Y'all remember the story? They did not have faith, so God says, since you won't have faith, I'm not going to give you the land. You're going to go in circles in the wilderness for 40 years until everyone 20 and over dies. And once that happened, the new generation came up. He said, now y'all ready? They said, we ready. So since you were young or not born, I have to give you the law all over again. That's what Deuteronomy was. Moses was teaching them the law. Two things. When they went and met God on Mount Sinai to get the law, God was teaching them two things. Number one, I am the true God, and this is how you approach me. That's what all the sacrifices were about. And then he said, the second thing is, this is how you act with each other. In other words, at the core of the law was that you have to love God and love everybody else around you. Everybody say amen. And that's a hard, tough thing. Matter of fact, when the Pharisee talked to Jesus and he said, what is the greatest commandment? He said, I'm going to tell you what you already know in Deuteronomy chapter 6, or the Shema. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Thou shalt, the Lord our God is one, and thou shalt love the Lord with all thy what? Heart, soul, mind, and strength. Now, when Jesus quoted Deuteronomy, he also added Leviticus chapter 19, which says, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And now the Pharisee knew that, but he said, well, who is my neighbor? You know, the one that you hate, the one that is your natural enemy, the one that doesn't look like you, the one that doesn't sound like you, the one that doesn't speak your language, the one that's dogging you out every single day. That's the one that you love. In other words, there is a perpendicularity to the love of God. What he was teaching them in Deuteronomy is that you cannot love God if you refuse to love the people he made. Oh, that's a hard teaching, isn't it? You can claim you love the Lord, you lift up your hands and you spread out and you praise him and you read the scripture every day. It doesn't mean a thing if you can't love somebody else other than yourself. So I'm just setting the tone for Deuteronomy. And so he's giving these laws because he said, I don't want you to go into the land and mess up the land with your lack of love, which is what they did anyway. But he says, this is what I want you to do. I want you to love everybody. And so one of the ways that you love your neighbor is to be a blessing to them. In other words, God blesses you. And when he blesses you, that is a model of how you are to love. Basically, when God does something for you, you are to take the same attitude and do that something for somebody else. Because when you were in need, God stepped in. Anybody? God ever stepped in when you were in need? The reason why he did that was not just to bless you in your hour of need, but it was to teach you how to be a blessing to somebody else. See this way that I love you? That's the way I need you to love everybody else around you. All right, so he's saying that to them. Right here, we love God literally in 4 dimensions with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Now, this is what kills me, because one of the biggest ways to be like God and to show love is to determine and to bless somebody in an area of their need based upon what God has given you. Say amen. This is turbulent water. We had a little turbulence on the way back from Costa Rica, so we did use a little bumpy. All right, the captain is speaking. I'm going to turn on the fasten seatbelt sign. This is going to get a little turbulent here. All right, so just so I know that you're still here, say amen one more time. Amen. Okay, I know you're still here. All right, watch this. What he says. Now, it's interesting to me that as Jesus interpreted Deuteronomy, he said in Matthew in chapter 25, he says, this is what I'm going to ask you when you stand before me at the end. In other words, I'm going to give you the test question in a study guide before the test happens, because I want you to pass the test. And so he said, when you stand before me, I'm not going to say, did you lead 3,000 people to Christ? He didn't say that. It blew my mind. Although that is what we're supposed to do. He said, that's not what I'm going to say. He's not going to say, did you raise to the highest heights of financial capability? He's not going to say that. He's not going to say that. Did you put on the greatest programs through your church? Nothing wrong with programs through your church. We're supposed to do that. But he said, that's not what I'm going to ask you about.
It's not.
Were you the best you that you could ever be in life? Did you go to every self-help seminar? Did you get rid of all of your bad habits? And were you a model citizen of the country? He said, I'm not going to ask that.
I'm not going to ask any of that.
All he's going to say is, he says, when I was hungry,
Yes. Yes.
did you feed me?
Yes.
When I was thirsty, did you give me something to drink?
Yes.
I was naked and cold, did you clothe me?
Yes.
I was sick or I was in the lockup, did you come and visit me?
Yes.
He said, if you have done this to the what? Least of these, you've done it to me.
Yes.
He says, here's how you love somebody. You have to meet them in the hour of their need. And now, the reason why we have different, not y'all, some of you are new, and so we have rules here. We have rules at church. You know, when I talk about something out of the scripture, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. I don't know what's going on in your life. You know, there's the Holy Spirit, but I don't know. I'm talking about people who are not here, So praise God that you are here, because I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people who are not here. Now, thank you. That's fine. Thank you so very much. Jesus picks up the idea in the book of Revelation chapter 2. Remember, we talked about Revelation chapter 1 several weeks ago as I'm preparing our study through the book of Revelation. In chapter 2, he talks to the church at Smyrna. Now, this is what blows my mind. He says, I know two things about you. I know that you are afflicted, and I know that you are in poverty. He's talking to his church. He says, now, to my church, to my people, I'm saying you are afflicted and you are in poverty. But then he says, but you know what? You are what? Rich.
Yes.
Even though you're in affliction and you're in poverty, you are rich.
Yes.
Now, what he's trying to help us understand, and you know, I'm going to stop saying this about myself. I always talk about how I'm a poor, broke preacher and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to stop saying that because once I went down there, I discovered that I'm not a poor, broke preacher. Go tell your friends, because I'm not talking about you. Most of them, they are not poor. They're just mismanagers of finances and resources.
Yes.
Oh, go on and look at it, man. I'm not talking about y'all. I said I'm not talking about y'all.
Amen.
We not broke, we just mismanage the resources that we have.
Yes.
And why do we mismanage our resources? Because we're too busy chasing priorities that are not God's priorities. I gotta, and I don't mean no harm, I gotta have the best car, I gotta have my cable TV, I got my hand high in the air, I got this bill, I got that bill, I gotta take out a loan, I gotta have the best clothes and all that. And so I spend my life devoted to the property that I have amassed, trying to maintain a certain kind of lifestyle that I see on TV but I cannot really afford. And now when it comes to my needs, I'm poor and I'm broke. You're not poor, you're rich. But your priorities are out of order. Why is that important? Because if I lock myself up in terms of resource, I can't be a blessing to nobody.
That's the truth. Teach us, Jesus.
So he says, don't worry about it. You're rich and endure your suffering because y'all gonna suffer. He says at the church of Smyrna. We'll be back there when we walk through the book of Revelation. All right, back to Deuteronomy. Let me set this thing here. Now, what changed it all for me, and they didn't, I thought somebody would share this, didn't share that. We went down and we were worshiping on dirt under a canopy, but the pastor was building his building. He was building a church. I put a picture up, it just had the frame, and I discovered that in order to have the wooden planks to build his church, he planted the trees for the wood himself.
Yes.
He planted the trees. Now this is vision.
Yes.
It took 8 years for the trees to grow tall enough to get legitimate wood for his church. He said, I'm going to plant this, and in 8 years from now, I'm going to build me a church.
Yes.
And he is cutting the planks out of the trees that he planted 8 years ago just to build the frame of his church.
Yes.
Ah, God Almighty, my God Almighty. Listen, what's the principle? If you want to be a blessing, you got to be a blessing.
Yeah.
And I just shared the other day, and I'm kind of off topic here, but it's on my mind right now. I just shared the other day, you know, a lot of people are telling me, well, you need to get a building, you need to get a building. And you know, it would be nice to get a stable location and to get a building of our own and all that kind of stuff. But you know, we're not going to rush into anything. We're not going to rush into anything because I bet you, I want to, for our church, even though it's a brand new church, it's a small church, to be a blessing to these churches we visited in Costa Rica. There are 3 of them who are worshiping hard and a lot lower than we are. And I guarantee you, if we contribute to the building of their churches, you think God is not going to bless us with what we need?
Yes, Lord. Yes, He will.
One of the gentlemen, and he didn't like to tell us, who was with us on our team, has already, as of 2 days ago, went and spent $500 to get them some zinc to cover their roof. Just because he saw what was going on. And he would be mad if I was telling this, because he called and asked me, he said, Pastor, can I please do this in the name of 316? Because I don't want anybody to know that I'm the one that's doing it. Sorry, don't tell the preacher nothing. And so now I'm getting all these messages from Costa Rica talking about, thank you, Pastor, thank 316 for investing into our ministry effort. And so as a result, what we're going to do is we're going to begin investing in the cement that they need for their floor before the rain season comes. We might not have a lot, but God knows what to do with a little, and He can multiply it. And I guarantee you, if we're a blessing to them, God will be a blessing to us. So know about it? Okay. All right, let me do this real quick because I said I was going to be quick today. All right, if you want a blessing, you got to be a blessing. Look at Deuteronomy 15, 7 through 11. Here's what was going on. Look at verse 7. It says, if you have a poor man of your brethren within your gates or within your city, which the Lord is giving. Everybody say giving. Giving. Which the Lord is giving you. Now, when it says poor, that's a word that's also used to describe somebody that's in need or low status or having a lack of power in society. In other words, you're broke, you're low down, and then you don't have anything in your resource to be able to get out of the status where you are. And so you are down and you cannot get up. There is not an opportunity for you even to proceed or to go forward. And so he says, you have these folk that are poor in the land, in the city, which the Lord is giving you. Y'all didn't shout right there. Y'all didn't get it. That was a reminder that God was giving him to say, everything you have, which distinguishes you economically from that other brother, is being given by me. And it's a participle. He says, everything that I am in the process of giving you, you need to take that and give it to the brother who has nothing. In other words, I cannot give you anything if you're not willing to help somebody else out. Somebody says, you're making that up. Come on, let's keep reading the verse. He says, this is what I'm giving you, which your God, everybody say your God. In verse 7, he does a reminder. Number 1, I'm the one that's giving. I'm the one that's giving. Number 2, he says, I want you to focus on relationship and not resource. In other words, you got to focus on God and not what God is giving you. Because guess what? If you focus on resource, and I don't mean any harm, this is all of us. If you focus on resource, it's difficult for us to give. Because we're looking at what we have, and we're going to look at what we're going to have after we give to somebody else. You know, it's difficult to, but he's saying, no, you gotta focus on me, your God. How can I illustrate this? I love, can I say that? I love banana pudding. I love banana pudding. Oh, God. I love it. I I'm sorry, I just felt something really. And the Lord blessed me to marry a woman who makes the best. I'm sorry, no offense, I haven't had yours yet. The best banana pudding on planet Earth. On planet Earth. I might talk my way into one. But I get mad because, whenever she's good at making stuff, she doesn't make it a lot because she gets tired of eating it all the time. And so the only time that I get to eat from this good banana pudding is when we have a family gathering. We have, they always request her. She is the one that brings the banana pudding. The banana pudding, and she will bring the banana pudding to the family gathering. And there's so many people, even before it's time to eat, we haven't even prayed. There's a line that forms literally to get the banana pudding, and I always find myself at the end of the line. So I don't get to get that wonderful banana pudding while I'm at the family gathering. But do you know why I don't get discouraged about not getting what is on the counter? Because I know the person who's able to make the banana pudding. So I don't mind taking my pudding and sharing it. Here, you need a slice. Here, you need a piece with somebody else. Because if they eat it all up, I'm going home with the maker. God is saying, don't you worry about losing your resources when I want you to be a blessing to somebody else, because the same one that gave it to you in the first place is the same one that will give it back to you. You know the Lord of the resources. You ain't got to worry about what your money is going to be down to. He's going to bless you one more time. He says, remember, I'm your God, I'm your God. I'm the one that's giving it to you in the first place. I need you to be a blessing to somebody.
Thank you, Lord.
That's in need.
Thank you, Lord.
Watch this what he says. I keep saying I want to be short. Look at verse 7. He says that your God is giving you. Now, if you look at it, there are two things in verse 7 that says you are not to do. Right there in the verse, look at it. There are two things that you are not to do. He says, number one, I'm the one that's giving. It's a process of giving. I'm constantly giving to you. I just want you to give a little bit of that to somebody else. Remember, I am your God. It's not the resource, it's the relationship. Then he says, you shall not what? Harden your heart or shut your hand. Two things. What are they? Harden your heart and shut your hand. Now, when he says harden your heart, the way it is written grammatically implies something that is habitual and a process that's ongoing. In other words, what happens in your heart is that the first time you harden your heart, it will start to harden, and it won't be the same as it was before it started to harden. Then the next time somebody comes, your heart gets just a little harder. And then the next time it gets a little harder. And so by the time you encounter somebody who has a need, your heart is so hard, you won't have the passion to be able to be a blessing to somebody else. That's why if anybody has ever done that to you, it wasn't anything wrong with you. They have had years of heart hardening.
Yes, that's right.
Now, look at the sequence of this. I believe in sequence. Things happen in structural order. It says, harden your heart and a closed hand. There's a one-to-one correlation between your heart and your hand. In other words, whatever you see somebody do on the outside is just reflective of what's going on the inside. You ever have people that just, go up one side of you and down the other, or just cuss you out, and you go home thinking about, dang, what's wrong with me? Guess what, baby? Ain't nothing wrong with you, because anybody who does that already has that in their heart. You were just the closest one at the time. So what God is saying it is not a hand problem or a doing problem. It's a heart problem. He says, do not harden your heart.
Yes, God.
Because if you harden your heart, look at the sequence right there, still in the verse. What will happen? If you harden your heart, you'll become a trap monkey.
Ooh, Lord.
So I said, what you talking about? It took my brother from Ghana to tell me how to catch a monkey. Did you tell me? I told him to use it. He says it's really easy. Now we saw some monkeys. We were in Costa Rica, didn't we? And they were all up at the top of the trees. You know, you can't even get close to them, and they're all the way. And they move quickly. And they're up there and in the trees, and they looking at it like, ha 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 ha. I'm up in the tree. But it's real easy. It's real easy to catch a monkey. According to my brother from the motherland, he says all you have to do, you get this wall and you burrow a hole in it, but you make a small hole. And then you take either some dates or something that's appetizing to the monkey, and you put them in the hole. You put them in the hole. Y'all got the picture? So I got a wall, and I put a hole in, and I burrow it deep enough so I can put something. And the whole time, the monkey is watching you. He's watching you while you have what he wants in your hand. I'm not talking about y'all. I'm talking about the monkey who is watching somebody else that has something that belongs to somebody else, but you want what that other person has. And so you got to stay back. You're not going to ask for it. You're not doing it. You're just going to watch it. And you put it in the hole, and then you look around and you just walk away. You just walk away and away. Am I right, buddy? Am I right so far? You walk away. You walk away. So sooner or later, that thing is bothering the monkey so bad that he's got to go see what you put in the hole. And so what he'll do is he'll stick his hand in the hole, but the hole is only big enough for his hand to go in. And so he grabs whatever you put in the hole and he tries to pull his hand out. But he can't pull his hand out because his hole is in a fist holding all that stuff that belongs to you. And so you can walk up to him and he's ready to run and he wants to get away and he's faster than you and he can climb higher than you, but he cannot get his hand out of the hole. You catch him because he refuses to let go of what that belongs to him. And now he's literally trapped by the possessions that are in his hand. God is saying the reason why some of you, not y'all, the reason why some of the folk that you know have not been blessed yet by God is because you've got a grip on what you already have and you are trapped and can't get out of the hole of your life.
Wow.
God is saying, guess what you cannot do? God cannot feel a hand which is clenched tight and closed. He says, you want me to get a blessing to you, you gotta open up your hand. You gotta open up your hand. It is, and I know it's hard. Other people, this is the way that God works. This is the way that He works. I'm praying, I'm fasting. Lord, I need my breakthrough. I need my blessing. I need you to turn my life around. God is saying, you praying just like this, Lord. I need you to put it in my hand. I need you to deliver me. I need you to get me to another situation. I need you to bless me with a new job. I need you to give me, that car that I need. I need a relationship. You know what I need, Lord, but I'm going to keep my hand closed and tight. God says, I'm not going to do it until you open up your hand. Well, I don't have much, but there's somebody else that has less than you do.
Yes. That's right.
I need to know that you trust me.
Yes.
He says, gosh, I'm still verse. I got to come because I was going to be short today. I was going to be short today. He says, what's in your heart will flow to your hand. Wow. If you close your hand, you cannot open it and receive what God has for you. I don't care how much you want it, how much you love it, how much you cry, how much you lay out. God says you need to open up your hand and not harden your heart. All right, I'm going to hook some of this off. Let's go to verse 8. He said, you shall open your hand. How shall you open it? Wide. And shall give him that which is sufficient for his need. But look at verse 9. Beware that there's not a wicked thought that the 7 years coming. What does he talk about there? Let me explain that, and then we'll look at verse 10, I'll be done. Let me explain that. Now we're in the Old Testament, right?
Yes.
We're in the book of Deuteronomy, right?
Yes.
So he's giving them the law all over. In other words, this is how you relate when you get into the land. And so God says, I'm a holy God and I need to be worshipped. And so every 7 years, I want you, number one, to give the land rest. Don't plant nothing. The land needs to rest. And he says every 7 years, if somebody owes you some money or some property or things like that, you need to release them from what they owe you. In other words, if they haven't paid you in 7 years, forget about it. Just wipe the debt free. I know, see, some of y'all saying, I'm glad I'm not an ancient Hebrew because you borrowed $20 from me 20 years ago, and I want my $20. Am I right, Tom? Right about it? I want my $20. God said, no. He said, you have to release them from their debt. You got to let it go. People who are in prison, they were to be set free. They were set free because it was an earthly demonstration of what God was going to do prophetically through Jesus Christ. It was the idea of Jubilee. So every 7 years was a Jubilee, and every 7 of 7 years, or every 50 years, was the actual Feast of Jubilee. So that there will always be a time where you would be released from your debt. All right? And so now what he's saying to them is, if your brother comes and asks for something from you, don't harden your heart because you're in year 6. In other words, I'm going to say no, because I know when year 7 comes, I ain't gonna get nothing back. You can ask me year 1 or 2, but not year 6. God said that's an evil thought in your heart. What is the practical contemporary principle to that? Watch this, listen. Whenever someone is in need, if you're gonna do it God's way, you cannot give them something expecting an ROI. Or a return on your investment. God is saying, if you're expecting to get something back, then don't bother with it at all. That's an evil thought in your heart. If your brother's in need, just give it to them and keep on moving. You know, some people, they start treating you different. They're looking at you crazy. I know I gave it to you, but I'm trying to be patient. I'm not going to say nothing about it, but at some point, you better come over to my way. You're going to make me lose my religion. Y'all might be laughing because you was that one. I don't know. God says if you're going to bless somebody who is in need, don't do it because you think you're going to get a return on your investment. Because you're not the one making the investment in the first place. He said, you guys set him free. All right, I'm almost done. Let me skip. Verse 10. You shall surely give him, and your heart shall not be grieved. Oh, I guess I'll do it. Don't make people beg and be a slave because they have something that they need that you have. You just have to bless them with a good heart. He says it's a heart issue. It's not a resource issue. Let me close with this. He says at the end, actually in verse 10, I don't have time for 11. He says, here's what I will do for you. In other words, you don't harden your heart and you open up your hand. You decide to be a blessing without having a grudging heart. He said, I'll do 2 things for you, verse 10.
Yes.
I'll bless you in a couple of your works. No. He said, I'll bless you in all your works.
Yes.
And all that you put your hand to, everything that you touch. So it's not just financial. He says, everything that you do, you will walk in favor, and I will bless it. Everywhere you go, everyone you encounter, every need that you have, I'm going to be there waiting. I can't wait to give it to you. And I'm going to do it so fast, you won't even have to ask me for it. That's what Jesus meant when he said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be what? I ain't even got to ask for all that stuff. He says, I will bless all the work and everything you touch. I'm going to bless. Now, when he says that, that means that is stuff that is not just for you. In other words, if I come into contact with somebody else, that somebody else is going to be blessed because you've got a good heart and an open hand.
Yes. Thank you, Lord. Yes.
He says everything you touch will literally multiply.